artists, I hope you are having an awesome day today. So previously, you have learned 10 techniques that you will use over the course of the next two projects, one of which you started last week, and you should be getting somewhat close to being finished. The technique that you used most in your project, your first project here, was this smooth blending technique right here. And but there's several other techniques that you learned, and I hope you had a good time with that. I really enjoy oil pastels. If you're in my class, I probably said that 100 times. Sorry, but in any case, I'm gonna sort of front load you with some information, and then we will eventually dive into another project in which you will use some of these other techniques that you learned even more. Here is an image of the abstract oil pastel that you should be completing pretty soon. We started by overlapping and intersecting lines, and then we filled in those resulting shapes with blended colors. All right, so the next project is going to be a landscape. Do not start on your landscape without receiving instruction on exactly what to do there, okay? Because I don't want you to do anything that you have to redo. In the landscape, as I said, we're going to use a lot of these techniques. First, we're going to learn how to sort of diagram a landscape. But before we do, I want to see what you guys can do. So just kind of play along. This will go in your digital sketchbook. This is part of what you will upload at the end of the day today. So draw a 2-inch by 3-inch rectangle in your sketchbook. Usually inches are about this length right here. So look at your ruler and make sure that you're not using millimeters, which would be like really tiny, or centimeters, that would be pretty short. You're looking for inches. So 2 inches by 3 inches. This is not to scale. This is just a diagram. And I want you in that space to sketch a scene. Now, a sketch is not a finished drawing, so don't panic. Sketch a scene, like an outdoor scene. That's what a landscape is. That includes some kind of foliage, so flowers and trees. And then it should have some kind of water happening in the middle or somewhere. Maybe you can decide where to put it. And then in the distance, let's show some mountains. So pause the video, take a few minutes, and in a small 2-inch by 3-inch rectangle, see what you can do with that. All right, so at this point, I'm assuming that you have drawn your landscape and you are ready to move on. So how did you do? Would you say that you were successful in making some things look further away and some things look closer? If you're in a classroom right now, discuss it with your class. We'll kind of go around the room and sort of see what were some strategies that you used as an artist, some tricks that you used to make some things look further away and to make some things look closer. All right, so in your recent history, you learned how to do 2-point perspective and 1-point perspective. We're going to kind of use that, but we're going to put a twist on it. So in these 2-point and 1-point perspectives, how did we, in this kind of scene, how did we make things look closer or further away? How do you know, in this building scene right here, how do you know that this building is closer to us than this building back here? I'm guessing you're probably going to say because this one's much larger than this one. And that is correct. There's more than one way to tell, but that's probably the most obvious. Same here. So if we're looking at a 1-point perspective, I can tell that this set of lockers and this set of lockers is much bigger than this set of lockers. This door is probably not an Alice in Wonderland door. It's probably just tiny because we're standing so far away from it. So that kind of perspective is called linear perspective. It can be a little difficult to apply linear perspective to something like this because there's no geometric lines, okay? There's not a lot of straight lines happening here. Perspective is still at play, but we have to show it in a different way. So we're going to use atmospheric perspective, all right? One trick that we're going to use is placement. So things that are further away, if they're going back into space, they get higher on the plane. So in this particular scene right here, that sphere is down near the bottom of the page, whereas the one that's further away is up higher on the page. And this little scene right here, we're talking about color and value. There's no color in this really, but I think you can imagine it with the gray that we can see here. Things are going to get duller. So if these were all bright red, this would be super bright cherry red. This would be pretty close, but a little less vibrant. And this one back here would be a lot less red than this one. Even though we know these are all red, we're not going to color them all in red because this one's further away. And that also depends on how much further away it is, to be honest with you. So this is a little exaggerated, but you can see it pretty well right over here in this little scene. So the mountains do not actually disappear. It's just because of the atmosphere, it makes the colors dull. So if you're outside, if you're drawing an outside scene, they're going to get much lighter. If you're drawing an inside scene, it's going to get darker the further away it gets from us, because the light cannot reach it. Okay. So again, the word here is atmospheric perspective. All right. Another thing that we use, and you saw this in linear perspective as well, was size. So here's a teeny tiny little sphere. Here's a gigantic one. It's not that this one's tiny and this one's huge. It's just that this one's so far away. All right. Texture. This is a big one. People don't catch this. If you are drawing a field of flowers, the ones that are up close and personal, you're going to see all the details on. The ones way back in the back, you're not going to see any details. They disappear. Overlapping, super important. So the things in front, you're going to see the entire object. Things that are going back further into space, they're probably going to be obstructed by something that's already in front of them. Okay. In this example right here, there's several things at play. Okay. We can talk about how in this area right here, the colors are warm, bright, the details are there, and it's very large objects. All right. In this midsection here, the colors are a little bit cooler. The colors are less bright, less vibrant, and there's a little bit fewer details here. All right. Way back here in the back, it's the coolest colors. It's dull, no detail, and tiny objects. So let's look at that a little closer. So you might be thinking, well, green is a cool color. Well, that's true, but this is a yellow green, and so that kind of warms it up some. We could say that. But nevertheless, this is much brighter. I can see a lot of details. So in this shrubbery, these trees here, whatever is going on, I can see all the little tiny branches and the twigs. I can't see any of that in this middle section. I know that these are probably trees because this is a mountain. These are not all tiny little bushes. And I know that they have twigs, but I can't see them because they're further away. And back here, I can't even see any trees. All right. It gets so light, so pale, so little detail. And the colors get cooler and cooler as they go away. Less vibrant. Okay. You could think of it this way too. Things that get further back, they become blurry. They're pale and blurry. Things that are close to us are vibrant, and we can see all the details. We can see all the textures. Okay. We can actually diagram a landscape. If I gave you a landscape and I told you a picture like this and I told you just to draw it, it can be a little daunting. Okay. A little overwhelming. Maybe you would feel like you can't do that. But there's a trick. We can sort of break it up into sections. And you want to know these words. So the foreground is anything right up here in the front. This is where all your bright colors are. That's what I was talking about. So this we call the foreground. All the stuff we can see in detail. The middle ground is right through here. A lot less detail happening, but a good bit more detail than what's going on back here in the background. So foreground, middle ground, background. Okay. The other thing you can see on here is the horizon line. So if I ask you to draw a landscape, the easiest thing to do is go ahead and mark off your horizon line. I think the person who did this diagram feels like the horizon line is right at the mountain crest. I wouldn't necessarily think of it that way. It can be a little confusing sometimes, but it's pretty much whatever's at your eye level. Okay, if you're standing on the ground looking straight out, wherever your eye level is your horizon line. So it really depends on maybe whether you're sitting or standing on high ground or low ground. That's how you determine where your horizon line is. A lot of times it's also where the sky meets the land, the flat land, not so much the tip of the mountain. So the tip of the mountain and the sky is going to be in the background. The middle ground is right through here in this middle area, and the foreground is what we can see in greatest detail. It's where all the vibrant, bright colors that are happening. This is often where the action's happening in a work of art. All right. So the easiest thing to do, here's another one. And you can see really easily here, you can pick this out as the horizon line. And then we've got our middle ground, really all of this through here. How I could consider the middle ground. This is the background, and this is the foreground. So if I'm starting this as a drawing, I'm probably going to come in with my pen and I'm going to draw my horizon line. It's not quite halfway down the page, so I'll probably, I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead. The first thing I would do would map out my horizon line. I'm going to put that right there. I can identify where my middle area is going to be and kind of separate it from where I want my foreground. So this will be the foreground. All this section will be the middle ground. And this back here will be the background. So that's the first thing I would do. And then the next thing I'm going to do is kind of probably start defining where my mountain is, because that's kind of an important part. And then I'll start adding texture and things like that. So what I'd like you to do right now, so you've gotten a pretty good amount of information. I want you to draw another rectangle in your sketchbook, 2 inch by 3 inch. So again, 2 inch by 3 inch. Whoop, whoop. This is not to scale. This is just an example. So in your sketchbook, draw a 2 inch by 3 inch rectangle. Pause the video. I'm going to put this on the screen large. And I want you to use the information that you just received. And I want you to try to sketch this landscape. I'd like to see if you're more or less successful than before. My feeling is I think you're going to be more successful because you have a little bit of information. You know how to break this down. So pause the video. Take a few minutes to do a sketch. That's not a finished drawing per se. Take a few minutes to do a sketch. And just with your pencil, sketch this out in your sketchbook. All right, so I'm assuming you have done your sketch. Now look at your 2 sketches. Which one do you feel like you were more successful in? Hopefully, now that you've got a little bit more information, you're feeling like this one's looking a little stronger. All right, so for today in your sketchbook, you should have 2 small sketches, and you should answer this question or address this statement. Name the 3 strategies. You can just list 3 strategies that an artist might use to suggest that some objects are going further back into space than others. So we talked about several strategies, but I want you to name at least 3 strategies that an artist might use to give the impression that objects are going back into space. You're going to take a photo of your sketchbook page today. Maybe use more than one sketchbook page. That's fine. Just take a picture of your sketchbook. Show that you've got the 2 drawings and that you have addressed this question right here. And put it in your digital sketchbook. Complete your attendance or your reflection question for the day, and you are done. If you have additional time, use your pastels to add color to your landscape. Experiment with the techniques that you learned to see how you can create textures and blending. You guys have done an awesome job today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for following along. Thank you for your attention. I hope you had